The hall of the alien tribunal was built to make people feel small. Tall black pillars stretched so high they disappeared into shadows, and cold blue lights floated in the air like silent watchers. Rows of alien council members sat in a wide circle, their faces hidden behind golden masks. At the center, on a raised stone platform, stood the prisoner, an alien woman with silver markings on her skin and violet eyes that seemed too bright for the darkness around her. She was chained at the wrists and ankles. A faint hum coming from the glowing restraints. The air around her felt heavy, as if even the walls were holding their breath. The head judge, towering figure with pale gray skin and 4 glowing eyes, lifted a staff and struck it once against the floor. The sound echoed like a hammer on steel. All charges have been reviewed. The judge's voice rolled out, deep and without mercy. By the laws of the Galactic Council, you are found guilty. The sentence is death at first light. No one in the hall made a sound. No one dared to speak for her. She did not beg. She stood straight, her chin high, but her hands trembled just enough for someone looking closely to see. Her eyes scanned the room, moving past the masked faces until they stopped in the shadows at the back of the hall. A human man stood, his arms folded. His skin was pale compared to the deep colors of the alien crowd. His dark hair cut short. He wore no armor, no sign of rank, just a simple black jacket that did not belong in such a place. His name was Rian, though no one here knew it. She held his gaze for a moment, almost as if she recognized him, though they had never met. Then the guards pulled at her chains. Turning her away, the human's eyes narrowed. The tribunal continued with its formal words, listing laws and codes, but Rian was no longer listening. His thoughts were somewhere else. He had heard whispers about this trial, how it had been decided before it even began, how the evidence against her had appeared too suddenly, too perfectly, as if placed there by unseen hands. And now he was watching the sentence carried out in words. It made his chest feel tight around him. The alien audience shifted in their seats, some whispering to each other, others sitting still like statues. To them, this was just another day, another criminal, another execution. The head judge's voice rose again. The prisoner will be taken to the holding cells until dawn. Execution will be public. 2 guards stepped forward, each wearing black armor with silver lines across the chest. They took the prisoner by the arms, their grips firm and unkind. She stumbled once on the steps, but they did not slow. The sound of her chains dragging on the stone floor followed her out of the chamber. Rian's eyes tracked her until she vanished through the heavy doors. When the doors closed, the silence that followed was different. It was final. A small alien clerk approached Rian, his insect-like eyes blinking. "Human," the clerk said, his voice a dry whisper. "Tribunal business is done. You may leave." Rian looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll leave," he said quietly. But inside, he had no intention of walking away from this. He turned and stepped out into the night air. The city around the tribunal was carved into the side of a jagged cliff, glowing with scattered lights. Above, 2 moons hung in the sky, casting pale silver over the stone streets. Far below, the sound of ocean waves crashed against the rocks. Rian walked slowly, his mind heavy with questions. Why had she looked at him like that? Why had no one spoken for her? And why, in a galaxy full of crimes, had this one woman been chosen for such a public and certain death? He had seen enough courts in his time to know when something smelled wrong. And this smelled worse than most. Down the street, a group of armored guards passed by, speaking in low voices. He caught only fragments. Orders from above must be done quickly. No witnesses. Rian's steps slowed. He didn't know this woman. She was just another face in a galaxy of strangers. And yet, the look in her eyes had stayed with him. It wasn't just fire, it was the look of someone who knew the truth and had been buried under lies. He reached the edge of the cliff and looked out over the ocean. The wind was cold, carrying the scent of salt. In the distance, faint lights marked the prison towers, sharp against the night sky. Somewhere in there, she was waiting for the dawn that would never come for her. He stayed there for a long time, the moons high above, the waves far below. When he finally turned away, his face was set. The tribunal had made its decision. But he had made his own. The night wind swept through the narrow streets, carrying with it the distant hum of airships patrolling the upper skies. Rian walked with his head slightly lowered, blending into the late-night crowd of traders, workers, and off-world travelers. To most people in this city, he was just another face passing by. But here, on this alien world, a human always stood out, especially one who stayed too close to tribunal business. He stopped under the glow of a half-broken street lamp, pretending to check a small device on his wrist. In reality, his eyes were scanning the area for watchers. The tribunal had its informants everywhere, spies hidden in plain sight, listening for whispers of dissent. Rian knew he was already on their list. He had been on such lists before, but this time was different. This time, someone's life depended on how quickly he could move. Far ahead, a narrow alley dipped into shadow. He slipped inside, the noise of the market fading behind him. The smell of damp stone and rust filled the air. At the far end, an old metal door stood half open. A pale light leaked through the gap. He knocked twice, then once more. The door creaked open just enough for a single green eye to appear. "You're late, human," a voice hissed. "I'm careful," Rian replied. The door opened, revealing a short alien with skin like cracked stone and long, twitching fingers. His name was Keth, an information dealer who owed Rian a favor, one Rian had been saving for something important. Inside, the room was small and cluttered. Piles of old data, chips, hologram projectors, and broken communication gear covered every surface. Keth moved quickly, shutting the door behind them. "You want tribunal records?" Keth asked, his voice low. "I want everything," Rian said, stepping closer. "Trial footage, evidence logs, witness lists, and I want to know who ordered the execution." Keth's eyes flickered with unease. "That's dangerous. Even for you." Rian didn't flinch. She was set up. "I need proof." Keth hesitated, then tapped a sequence on a small console. A faint holographic glow appeared above the table, showing lines of alien text, timestamps, and security stamps. Rian leaned in, scanning the data. Most of it was meaningless until one name appeared: High Counselor Drevin. Rian's jaw tightened. Drevin was no ordinary politician. He was one of the most feared power holders in the sector, known for making enemies disappear. What's his connection to her? Rian asked. Keth's voice dropped even lower. She saw something she wasn't meant to see, something about the fleet. Drevin wants it erased, and she is the only witness. Rian's mind raced. A public execution wasn't just punishment, it was a warning to anyone else who might try to speak out. "Where is she being held?" he asked. Keth shook his head. "You already know, but getting inside is suicide. The prison towers aren't just guarded, they're alive. The walls track movement. The floors can lock you in place. The air itself can knock you unconscious. No one has ever broken out." "Then I'll be the first," Rian said quietly. Keth stared at him for a long moment, then pulled a small, battered chip from his coat. "This will open one gate. Just one. After that, you're on your own." Rian took it. "That's all I need." He left the way he came, blending back into the night. But as he reached the main street, he felt it, the prickling on the back of his neck that told him someone was watching. He didn't look over his shoulder. Instead, he kept walking, turning casually into another side path. His pace quickened only when he was sure no one else could see him. Whoever was following him was good to be a common thief. When he reached his rented room in the lower city, he locked the door, checked the window, and sat in the corner, letting the shadows hide him. He had learned long ago that in places like this, survival meant being invisible until the moment you struck. From his jacket, he pulled a small, worn picture one of his crew from years ago, standing on the deck of a human ship. Most of them were gone now, lost to wars and politics. But the look in their eyes was the same one he had seen in hers in the tribunal hall. It was the look of someone who refused to give up, even when the universe wanted them silent. He set the picture aside and began to plan. There were less than 8 hours until dawn. 8 hours until the execution. 8 hours to break into the most secure prison in the sector, find her cell, and get her out before the tribunal realized what was happening. He allowed himself one final moment of stillness, listening to the low hum of the city beyond the walls. Then he stood, loaded his weapon, and slipped the stolen chip into his pocket. The tribunal thought the human would walk away. They were wrong. The prison towers rose from the cliffside like jagged black teeth, each one connected by narrow bridges of metal and light. They seemed to scrape the clouds, their edges glowing faintly under the twin moons. From a distance, the towers looked silent. Up close, they hummed low, constant, like the breathing of something alive. Rion stood in the shadows at the base of the nearest tower, his eyes tracing the guard rotations. The alien soldiers moved in pairs, their armor reflecting the pale silver of the night. The stolen chip in his pocket felt heavier with each passing second. A patrol passed, their footsteps echoing on the steel walkway. Rion waited until they turned the corner before slipping out from the shadows and approaching a narrow service gate. It was hidden between two massive support beams, just as Keth had said. He pressed the chip into the slot. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the gate flickered, a faint ripple moving across its surface, and it slid open just wide enough for a single person to pass through. Inside, the air felt colder, sharper. The corridors were narrow, lit by dim blue strips along the floor. Cameras moved silently in the corners, following him as he walked. He kept his head down, his movements steady, trying to look like he belonged. The map in his wrist device guided him deeper into the tower, past storage rooms and mechanical shafts, until he reached the prisoner levels. A guard stood at the checkpoint, a tall insectoid alien with dark, glassy eyes. The guard's voice was a dry clicking sound. Authorization. Rian slid a forged pass across the scanner. For a moment, he thought it wouldn't work, but the screen flashed green. The guard stepped aside without a word. The holding cells were silent except for the faint hum of the restraints inside each one. Rion's boots echoed softly on the metal floor as he passed row after row of doors, each marked with alien symbols. He stopped at the one he was looking for. Through the small viewing slit, he saw her. She sat on the floor, her back against the wall, her wrists bound in glowing cuffs. Her silver markings seemed dull in the dim light, and her violet eyes stared at nothing. Yet, even in chains, she looked unbroken. Rion tapped lightly on the door. Her eyes snapped up, sharp and alert. She rose slowly, stepping closer until the faint light caught her face. "Human," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "Why are you here?" "To change what happens at dawn," he answered. She almost laughed. "Do you have any idea who wants me dead? You think you can fight them?" "I don't need to fight them," Rion said. "I just need to get you out." Her gaze narrowed. "No one survives after defying the tribunal." "I have," he said simply. There was a long silence. Then she stepped closer to the slit. "Why?" You don't know me. Rian met her eyes. Because I've seen this before. Someone innocent, crushed under the weight of lies. I didn't stop it then. I will now. Something in her expression shifted, not trust, not yet, but something close. To it, Rian keyed in a code, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. She stepped out, her chains still glowing. He pulled a small device from his jacket and pressed it to her cuffs. With a sharp spark and a faint hum. They unlocked and fell to the floor. Her wrists were raw where the metal had burned her skin. She rubbed them slowly, still watching him like he might vanish at any second. This way, he said. They moved quickly down the corridor, keeping to the shadows. Twice, they had to stop as guards passed by, their voices echoing in the cold air at the service gate. Rian checked the corridor one last time. Clear, they slipped through and began the climb. Down the narrow maintenance shaft that led outside. The tower, halfway down, she spoke. If we get caught, you'll be killed too. Then I'll make sure we don't get caught, Rian replied. They reached the lower exit and stepped into the night air. The sound of the ocean was louder here, crashing against the rocks below. For a brief moment, it felt like freedom. But as they crossed the shadowed path away from the tower, a siren began to wail. Red lights flashed on the walls above them. They know, she said. Rian's jaw tightened. Then we run. The wail of the siren rolled through the night like a living thing, echoing against the cliffs. High above, beams of white searchlights swept across the prison towers, cutting through the darkness. In the distance, the hum of patrol flyers grew. Louder, Rian grabbed her wrist and pulled her into the narrow path between two jagged rock walls. The ground was slick with saltwater spray, and the air stung their skin. Every step had to be fast, but quiet. The path curved down toward the lower city, a maze of old stone buildings and market streets. But the guards would already be sealing the exits. They'll track us, she whispered, keeping pace beside him. They'll try, Rian replied. Without looking back, they reached a rusted maintenance hatch half hidden by moss. Rian knelt, pulling a small tool from his pocket. It sparked against the lock, and the hatch creaked open, revealing a narrow tunnel that sloped downward into darkness once inside. The noise of the sirens softened, replaced by the steady drip of water and the hum of hidden pipes. The tunnel was just wide enough for them to move side by side. Where are we going? She asked, her voice low. Somewhere they won't think to look, Rian said. She studied him for a moment, then asked the question that had been sitting in her mind since the tribunal hall. Why risk this? You know who ordered my execution. You know what he's capable of. I know exactly what he's capable of, Rian said, his voice harder now. And I know you were set up. The tribunal's verdict was decided before you. Even stepped into that hall. Her eyes narrowed. You have proof? Not yet, he admitted. But I know where to find it. They moved deeper into the tunnel until they reached an old service room. The walls were lined with dead monitors and broken storage crates. In the center sat a cracked control terminal, its screen still glowing faintly. Rian began pulling wires from his pack, connecting them to the terminal. When they erased the public records of your trial, they forgot about the maintenance logs. This system has backups, messages, security clearances, movement records. All the things they don't want anyone to see. She stepped closer, her eyes scanning the flickering screen. And you think it will prove I'm innocent? Rian didn't look up. I think it will prove Drevin is guilty. The terminal beeped softly as files began to appear. Lines of alien script scrolled down the screen too fast for her to read, but Rian's eyes locked on a single phrase that repeated more than once. Asset removal, witness classified. He tapped a command, and the screen displayed an image. Her, standing in a docking bay, speaking to a group of off-world workers. Above her, a cargo transport's hold was opened and, inside it were weapons stamped with the seal of Dreven's private fleet. Her breath caught. This was months ago. I wasn't supposed to be there. I only went because I heard strange noises. I didn't even know what I was looking at. They knew, Rian said, and they couldn't risk you telling anyone. The screen flashed again. This time, it showed a message from Dreven himself. Execution must be public. Let it be a warning, her. Hands clenched into fists. He's using my death to scare others into silence. Rian pulled the data chip from the terminal and slid it into a hidden compartment on his belt. Now we have the truth, but getting it out will be the hard part. Before she could respond, a sharp clanging echoed through the tunnel. Rian froze. Footsteps, not one pair many. The sound was coming from both ends of the passage. They found us, she said, her voice tight. Rian scanned the room quickly. There was only one other way out, a small ventilation shaft, barely wide enough for them to crawl through. He pulled the grate free and motioned for her to go first. The metal was cold under their hands and knees as they moved through the shaft. Behind them, voices shouted, the alien language harsh and urgent. They crawled for what felt like forever, until they reached a rusted hatch above them. Rian pushed, and it swung open to reveal the underside of an old warehouse. They dropped down quietly, landing in shadows between stacks of metal containers. Faint light came through the cracks in the roof and dust swirled in the air. Outside, the sound of patrol flyers passed overhead. She leaned against a container, breathing hard. We can't keep running forever. Rian glanced toward the door, his jaw set. We're not running forever. We're getting this data to someone who can expose it. But first, we need to disappear. For a moment, the warehouse was silent in. The distant sound of heavy boots began to grow closer again. They exchanged a look. The web of lies had just begun to tighten. The sound of boots grew louder, echoing through the cracked walls of the warehouse. Rian's hand went to the small weapon holstered under his jacket. It wasn't much against armored guards, but it was better than nothing. She moved closer, keeping her voice low. How many? Too many, he said. We can't fight our way out. We vanish instead. His eyes scanned the shadows, searching for an exit. There a narrow loading door at the back, rusted but still intact. He signaled for her to follow, moving between the stacked containers like a shadow. Dust fell from the ceiling with every heavy step of the approaching patrol. They reached the door. Rian pushed against it, but it didn't budge. He pressed harder, the rust groaning in protest. With one final shove, the hinges gave way, and the door swung open just enough for them to squeeze through outside. The night air hit them like a wave, cold, damp, and thick with the scent of the nearby ocean. They were in the lower docks now, where cargo ships from distant worlds came and went. The area was mostly empty at this hour, save for a few dockworkers moving crates under dim yellow lights. This way, Rian said, leading her along the edge of the pier. Where are we going? She asked, keeping pace. To someone who owes me more than a favor, he replied. They moved quickly, keeping their heads down. The sound of the sirens was still faint in the distance, but the threat hadn't gone away, was only following from farther behind, at the far end of the dock. A small cargo ship sat moored, its hull dented and scarred from years of service. A lone figure in a hooded coat stood near the ramp, tapping on a datapad. The figure looked up as they approached, and Rian saw the flicker of recognition in her eyes. You shouldn't be here, Rian, she said, her voice sharp. Good to see. You too, Mara, Rian replied. We need a lift. Mara's gaze shifted to the alien woman beside him. She's the one from the tribunal. The one marked for execution. That's right, Rian said. And she's not guilty. Mara frowned. You're asking me to take on the tribunal and Dreven's wrath in one move? I'm asking you to fly, Rian said simply. The rest is on me. For a moment, Mara didn't answer. Then she glanced over her shoulder at the ship. 5 minutes. That's all you have to get on board. After that, I'm gone. They followed her up the ramp, the metallic clang of their footsteps echoing in the quiet. Inside, the cargo bay was dimly lit, filled with crates strapped to the walls. The hum of the ship's engines vibrated through the floor as Mara sealed the ramp behind them. Rian led the woman to a corner where they could stay out of sight. We'll be off-world soon, he said. She didn't look convinced. And then what? We keep running until we're caught again. Rian pulled the data chip from his belt and held it up. Not if we use this. We get to the right channel, broadcast the truth, and make it impossible for Dreven to hide what he's done. Her eyes studied the chip. You'd risk everything. For this, I already have, he said. Before she could respond, the ship lurched as its engines powered up. But the sudden roar of thrusters wasn't the only sound over the intercom. A sharp voice cut through. Dock security to Vessel Haven's edge. Power down and prepare to be boarded. You are carrying fugitives, wanted by the tribunal. Mara cursed under her breath. They've locked onto us. How fast can you break free? Rian asked. Not without tearing the ship apart, Mara replied. We need a distraction. Rian turned to the alien woman. Can you fight? A faint smile touched her lips. I've been fighting since before you were born, human. They moved quickly, heading to the side hatch. Outside, 2 armored guards were already climbing onto the dock. Rian fired a warning shot, forcing them to take cover. The woman moved with surprising speed, closing the distance and knocking one guard's weapon from his hands before striking him hard enough to send him stumbling. The other guard lunged, but Rian caught him in the side with a swift kick. Then slammed the hatch shut. Go! Rian shouted. Mara's hands flew over the controls and the ship roared to life. With a violent shudder, it lifted from the dock, breaking free from the clamps. Outside, security flyers gave chase, their spotlights cutting through the darkness. Inside the cockpit, alarms screamed. Mara dodged between the narrow canyon walls that bordered the city, the ship's hull scraping stone as she pushed it to the limit. They won't give up, Mara said through gritted teeth. Then we make them lose us, Rian replied. The alien woman glanced at him. If we survive this, human, I'll believe you when you say you have a plan. The ship shot out over the open sea, the city shrinking behind them, but Rian knew this wasn't over, not even close. Dreven would never let them go that easily, and somewhere deep inside, Rian was already preparing for the next move. The Haven's edge raced across the dark ocean, the hum of its engines deep and steady. In the cockpit, Mara kept her eyes on the navigation screen, weaving between the sharp peaks of islands that jutted out of the water like jagged blades. Behind them, the lights of the security flyers grew smaller, but they didn't vanish. There, tracking us by beacon, Mara said, without looking away from the controls. We need to cut it, or they'll follow us across the whole sector. Rian leaned over her shoulder. Where's the beacon? Under the hull, she replied. Which means someone has to go outside while we're moving. The alien woman stepped forward. I'll do it. Rian shook his head. It's too dangerous. One wrong move, and I've climbed ships in worse conditions, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Within minutes, she was suited up and stepping out into the biting wind. The roar of the engines vibrated through the hull. As she crawled along the underside of the ship, the ocean flashed beneath her, silver in the moonlight. Rian watched from the hatch, ready to pull her in if she slipped. She reached the Beacana small, blinking device bolted near the rear thrusters. With one swift motion, she yanked it free and tossed it into the waves. The signal light vanished instantly. When she returned inside, Mara gave a small nod. That bought us time. But Drevin won't stop. Rian knew she was right. Drevin had eyes and ears in every port. They couldn't hide forever. We have the proof, Rian said, tapping the chip in his belt. We just need to send it somewhere. He can't erase it. Mara glanced back at him. There's only one place I know that Drevin can't touch. The relay station on Orion's edge, but it's a risk. That place is neutral territory, and if we bring trouble there, then we go fast and quiet, Rian said. They set course for Orion's edge, but the journey was tense. The alien woman, now sitting in the co-pilot's seat, watched the stars in silence. Her eyes were focused, but Rian could sense the weight on her shoulders. You never told me your name, he said. She looked at him for a moment before answering. Tara. All right, Tara. Rian said, once this is done, you'll be free. No more tribunal. No more Drevin. She gave a faint smile, but there was no joy in it. Freedom isn't given, human. It's taken, and keeping it. It's harder. Then winning it. Hours later, the relay station appeared ahead a massive ring of steel and glass orbiting a small blue planet. Its outer hull glittered with lights, and ships of every shape and size drifted in and out of its docking bays. This is it, Mara said. Once we dock, we get the chip into their broadcast array. After that, every system in the sector will see what Drevin's been hiding. But as they approached, the station's comms channel crackled to life. Unidentified vessel, reduce speed, and prepare for inspection. Rian's gut tightened. That's not normal procedure. Not, Mara agreed. Which means they're expecting us. Through the cockpit glass, they saw two sleek black ships sliding out from the far side of the station. Their hulls marked with Drevin's personal crest. Tira's voice was sharp. He's already here. There was no time for debate. The black ships opened fire, their shots streaking past the haven's edge like burning comets. Mara swerved hard, the ship groaning under the sudden shift. We can't outgun them. She shouted. Then we outthink them, Rian said, scanning. The docking bays, he spotted one with an open cargo door. Mara Bay 17. Now. She didn't question it. The haven's edge dove sharply, skimming the station's hull before slipping into Bay 17 at full speed. Inside, dockworkers scattered as the ship skidded to a halt. Rian and Tara were already moving. The data chip clutched in his hand, broadcast array. He asked a stunned worker. The worker pointed down a long corridor. Level 3, Sector C, they ran. The sound of boots echoed behind them. Drevin's soldiers, pouring into the bay by the time Rian and Tara reached the broadcast control room, 2 guards were already waiting. Tara didn't hesitate. She moved like lightning, knocking one unconscious with a single strike, while Rian tackled the other. With the guards down, Rian slid the chip into the console. The screen lit up, data flooding through the stations. Network, holographic images of Drevin's fleet and the smuggled weapons filled the air. His orders for Tira's execution flashed across every screen. Transmission complete. The console's voice announced. A low roar of voices spread across the station as the truth went public. But Rian barely had a second to breathe before the door slammed open. Drevin himself stepped in, flanked by armored guards, his cold eyes fixed on them. You think this will save you, human? Drevin's voice was calm, almost amused. You've just declared war on the council. Rian didn't flinch. No. You declared war on the truth. I just made sure everyone sees it. Tira stepped forward, her voice cutting through the room. Your power is built on fear, Drevin. And fear dies when the truth lives. For the first time, Drevin's mask of control cracked. The station guards hesitated, no longer sure who they should obey. Rian's hand hovered over his weapon, but he didn't need to fire. The tide had already shifted. The broadcast rippled across the relay station like a tidal wave. Every corridor flickered, showing Dreven's orders for Terra's execution. The smuggled weapons, the Council's forged trial records. Dock workers stopped what they were doing. Traders froze mid-deal. Even the station's security forces hesitated, their eyes darting between Dreven and the proof hanging in the air. Rian kept his stance steady, his weapon still holstered. He wasn't here to win a shootout. The truth was already doing more damage than any blaster could. "You've made a mistake, human," Dreven said, his voice colder now. "You think showing them this changes anything? The Council will crush you both before the day is over." "No," Tira said, stepping forward. "The Council will crush you. Because they value power more than loyalty, and you just lost your grip on both." Murmurs spread through the room. One of Dreven's own guards glanced at another, their grips on their weapons loosening. Dreven took a step forward, his eyes narrowing. "You think you've won because you embarrassed me in public?" His gaze shifted to Rian. "You're just one human. When this is over, no one will even remember your name." Rian's voice was calm, almost quiet. "I don't care if they remember me. I care if they remember her." Something in that line seemed to settle the room. The guards stopped moving toward Rian and Tira. One by one, they lowered their weapons. Dreven's jaw tightened, but his authority was slipping away by the second. Then the relay station's public address system crackled to life. A voice-deep official spoke over every speaker. "By order of the Relay Station Council, Counselor, Dreven is to be taken into custody for crimes against the Galactic Accord. This station is now under direct, neutral authority." Dreven spun toward the door, but two of his own guards stepped into his path. They didn't hesitate this time. They seized him by the arms, tearing the ornate crest from his armor. "You fools!" Dreven roared, struggling against their grip. "Do you know what I'll do to you?" One of the guards leaned close enough for Rian to hear. "You won't do anything. Not anymore." They dragged him from the room, his voice fading down the corridor. The air felt different after he was gone, lighter, but still tense. Everyone knew this wasn't the end of corruption, but it was the end of Dreven's reign. Tira turned to Rian, her violet eyes brighter than he'd seen before. "You could have walked away. You didn't." He shrugged slightly. "Maybe I'm not good at walking away." She studied him for a moment, then asked quietly, "What happens to you now?" "Doesn't matter," Rian said. "What matters is that you're free. The tribunal can't touch you now. Every system in the sector has seen the truth. They'd have to kill half the galaxy to bury it again." Mara stepped into the room then, brushing dust from her coat. "The station wants you both off-world, before the Council sends someone else to clean up Dreven's mess. My ship's still warm. We leave in 10. Rian glanced at Tira. "Where will you go?" She hesitated. "Home, if there's anything left of it. And if not, maybe somewhere no one knows my name." He nodded slowly. "That's a good start." As they walked back toward the docking bay, people watched them pass. Some nodded in silent thanks. Others just stared, uncertain whether to believe what they'd seen when they reached the haven's edge. Mara was already prepping the engines. Rian paused at the base of the ramp, turning to face Tira. "This is where we part ways," he said. "You're not coming." She asked. "I've got my own fight to get back to," he said with a faint smile. "And now you've got your own freedom to guard." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she stepped forward and clasped his hand. Her grip was firm, warm. "If we meet again, human, I hope it's in better times." "Me too," he said. She boarded a small transport. On the far side of the bay, its hull marked with the insignia of a neutral colony. Rian watched as it lifted off. disappearing into the maze of traffic above the station. Back in the cockpit of the Haven's Edge, Mara gave him a sidelong look. "You could have gone with her." "I could have," Rian said. "That there will always be another Dreven out there. Someone has to be ready." Mara smirked. "And you're volunteering?" He leaned back in the co-pilot seat as the ship drifted away from the station. "I guess I am." The relay station shrank behind them, its ring of lights glowing against the darkness of space. Ahead lay 1,000 stars and 1,000 new battles. For now, though, the human who had defied an alien tribunal closed his eyes, letting the hum of the ship's engines carry him forward. Somewhere out there, Tira was free. Somewhere out there, the truth still mattered. And that was enough.